COT's base of operations is right here at thecouncilofTime.com. COT has no other outlet or venue. These are other folks who will rebroadcast, like DailyExcellence, who is authorized to rebroadcast by way of video.
Am I there?
Yeah, you're doing well? You doing well?
Doing well.
All right. You got to be busy. The Middle East is insane. I mean, the president's really busy. Does he ever sleep?
Nope. I don't think he does. And in fact, I know a couple of people that they wish he would sleep a little more than usual.
Would you be one of those? I won't say nothing.
No, not me. I don't sleep either.
Okay. You're about like President Trump. All right. Well, Mike, before we get into the Middle East here, I want to go to the sun first. And you notice I'm wearing the pineapple shirt.
I see.
It's a little see-through because I'm wearing this is a green screen. So it's coming through, the green leaves are on fire. I'm on fire tonight. So the sun's kind of hot.
Can't make that up about this whole thing. If the backstory, you just can't make that up.
No, you can't.
The world's falling apart. It's changing. Something is happening, and here we are.
Amen. So, Mike, the sun, we had 4 major solar flares. One was the largest this year, is X class 2.7, and then we started having blackouts in 5 different continents. There were blackouts.
Yeah.
And then there was even a 6-minute blackout from the towers in the Denver airport. 6 minutes?
Yeah, not to mention some of the damage to civilian equipment that took place over the last few days. It's been something the last 2 days, I'll say. Pastor Paul, the sun this time, and it wasn't quite direct, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. No.
Which makes it worse. When you have those high energy electrons, when they hit the atmospheres, they actually cause drag on the satellites. Remember Starlink?
Yes.
When Starlink went down, I believe that was a while back, and the reason why is because the density of the atmosphere increased, and Starlink's rockets did not have enough to overcome the drag.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, radio waves, the same thing happens. Normal radio equipment, your Wi-Fi, computers, internet, all that good stuff, it still operates by radio waves, right?
Okay.
Even cell phones, it's still radio waves.
Yeah.
But when we have any type of incursion like that, it alters those radio waves. So it disrupts communications. Now, radio equipment has a compensator in there for normal atmospheric anomalies. In other words, they already compensate and have formulas to adjust for that radio wave during normal disruptions in the atmosphere. But when a CME or something like that goes off, it can't overcome it. And of course, with GPS, it can become catastrophic because GPS, the smallest disruption in those waves, make it is just not tenable for GPS to be adjusted. And planes don't know where to go. They can be as much as 100 miles off. So GPS requires some pretty precise communications, radio waves untampered with or unaltered. And in this case, it went all the way down to the ground and underground. Some of the underground equipment was affected this time too. Yeah, so this was not normal.
So let me ask you, the Denver airport, when they said 20, it hit, there was 6 minutes outage. 20 pilots could not reach traffic control for 6 minutes.
Yep.
Is that the sun caused that? And is it?
Yeah, absolutely. That the equipment could not compensate for the distortions in the radio waves caused by the some of those charged particles coming in. Every time it hits equipment, it essentially builds up in the equipment, and it lets off a tiny lightning strike inside the equipment that can be very damaging. Most equipment, they have redundancy and backup, but it can become catastrophic or total failure. And this event was unusual.
Yeah.
because it was not supposed to, things weren't supposed to be torn up like that.
Right.
Even I had problems. Come to find out after some investigation, radio, well, let's just say radiation increase damaged some of the more heat sensitive components in some equipment that was sitting, that I had. So Pastor Paul, the infrastructure is not going to be able to take solar maximum. How can it take? So we're not even at solar maximum yet.
Right.
Right. We're not.
Right.
And so when it happens, how can equipment take that? They have materials that they try to mitigate some of those electronic particles, but I don't see that happening. This one in particular penetrated everything, almost all defenses, and we have a lot more coming.
So let me ask you, Mike. I understand that there's a problem with our air traffic controllers besides the sun affecting it. I'm hearing that the infrastructure has just been abandoned in the nation's airline system. With our is that true? I mean, is that?
Yeah, you know what? I think that when you're dealing, air traffic control is very precise business, right? It's a very precise business. When you have people who are not listening to their employees, you have other folks who are only concerned about common things, and they underrate the viability of such an operation. Well, it's going to fall apart. The equipment was patched together. Some of the requests for new equipment that came from companies was not top notch, and everybody, of course, wants everything at a cheap price. You can't do that with air traffic control, right?
No.
It should have been subsidized. It was not it should have been subsidized in a big way, because that's a critical piece of infrastructure.
Yes.
But they didn't do that. They, it was treated like a standard job. It's not standard jobs, not fast food. So you have to really invest some money into it. They didn't do that. And finally, it fell apart, and it's falling apart. And not to mention, people aren't spending money. That's why car dealers are failing right now. Right? Kind of like Jeep. Jeep is closing certain factories, big factories. They're closing because nobody's buying cars.
They're sitting back
right?
and waiting to see what's going to happen.
Well, they can't trust the market.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, you're right. The market has been the media has pounded on this. I know the market here recently has made a nice recovery, or at least on its way back. It's not there yet. And part of that is, I guess, the tariff is working. We're starting to see deals being signed and deals coming into play, but people are still going to wait until they see for sure. Well, when people wait, the market, it's harder for things to come back, right? So it's the chicken and the egg here.
It is. Yeah, it is. As precisely what's happening. It's not that anything is collapsing, right? No. That's not what's happening. It's just that people aren't buying, right? People aren't buying things.
Exactly.
And it's causing a ripple, a big ripple. Anyway, this solar storm, these last set of solar winds that we've had, plus some of the discharges, they are not normal. They're not normal. Nothing penetrates or is supposed to penetrate that far. 5 countries affected by something so common, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I mean,
that shouldn't have happened.
So does that mean there's more to this? Are these solar flares more explosive?
Absolutely, there's more to it.
Or is our magnetosphere weaker and thinner?
Well, we have that. We have that too. You're dealing with the exosphere, thermosphere, mesosphere, stratosphere, troposphere, all these spheres. And we do have a weakening event happening on the Earth. They're not as robust as they used to be. They're not. And so the density in the exosphere and thermosphere is increasing. Some of the craft that are up there are highly affected. The Air Force lost equipment, from this last one.
Planes are crashing.
Yep. And it's because essentially we have a change in our magnetic field, around the Earth. It's fluctuating. There are holes forming and closing. So it's really getting bad. We don't have the protection we once had. We simply don't.
Well, what about CERN?
So more radiation is going to come through.
I know CERN's got to be part of this. I mean, I know you've talked about it. I know BpEarthWatch has talked about it. CERN, they've been running it pretty strong. I mean,
well, I'll tell you a small story. Among other things they do, right?
Okay.
If all these scientists have an understanding that if you don't have magnetic fielding, you're dead, you're gone, right? Even right now, if something happens to the magnetic field of the Earth, we're dead. All of us topside are dead. With no CMEs, right? With no solar flares, we're dead. We're dead. The atmosphere is sustaining life on this planet. And without protection of the atmosphere, we're dead.
Okay.
Without the magnetosphere, we're dead. CERN has developed the strongest magnets on the Earth.
Wow.
So think about something. Among other things they do, they have perfected the magnets, right? Okay. When they cut this thing on, it does affect the magnetic field of the Earth. CERN does, right?
Okay.
So if you have developed the strongest magnets on the Earth, then you can protect any city you so desire, right? You could set these things up over New York City. If the magnetic fielding of the Earth collapsed, you could spread out the shielding over New York City, and those in New York could survive.
You can direct to affect what part of the area of the Earth you want to protect and what part you don't?
They can simply set them up, sure. They can set them up, and there you go. They're not hard to set up. The technology, right? The technology was that breakthrough. That was a milestone. And while everybody's talking about it, CERN is involved in quite a few things, but I keep pointing out one of the greatest devices they have developed are their magnets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you have magnets, Pastor Paul, you can explode a nuclear weapon and redirect all that radiation wherever you want that radiation redirected.
What? See, nobody said anything about that. I thought it was just explosion. It does a mass damage, and then the radiation blows in the wind and dissipates.
If you can overwhelm you can only do this with magnetics. Okay. You can essentially redirect the radiation anywhere you want it to go. You can also put up if CERN would never be affected by radiation. If something went off, all they have to do is turn the machine on, and it would essentially create a dome
over CERN,
over Switzerland. Yeah. Yep.
So maybe so that's crazy. I had no idea. So
they have a lot of facilities all over the Earth.
Yeah, there's a lot of
CERNs. Now all those facilities have those magnets. Think about that.
That's dangerous.
They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
What would Einstein say about this? Would he be a little nervous about this power?
He'd know they're getting ready for something. Why develop? In fact, it is a known fact you don't need that large of a collider to accomplish what they've been accomplishing. So where do they need those huge magnets for? You know, the magnets are triple the size of what they actually need.
Okay.
Why develop them triple the size? And we know what happens if they turn them off. Remember that aircraft that went down?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When CERN fired up. So that CERN is essentially a particle beam weapon. The biggest weapon on Earth is CERN. You can direct particles, high-speed particles, with magnets. That's a particle beam weapon.
I mean, even this week they announced that they can take atoms, I think it's atoms, molecules at least of lead, and at the speed of light create gold. Very small flakes.
Yeah, it's
gold.
A byproduct. It's been there. It's a byproduct. Yeah. Yep.
So this is unnatural. To me, this is an unnatural event that they're manufacturing. Very unnatural. It's upsetting the balance of God's planet of Earth. Do you think so?
Well, they're also harnessing. A lot of that deals with quantum computing and some of the theories and what they're actually doing, because quantum computing has many people more scared of that than CERN.
Really?
If you pull something out of a dimension, right? And all dimensions are in balance. And this is not, science fiction. This is science fact. If you pull something out of a dimension, everything has to stay in balance. So then what other dimension is going to have to surrender something to keep the balance? So that's what we're essentially seeing. And if you pull something out of a dark dimension, it just so happens one of the dimensions, just to put it bluntly, one of the dimensions that they would accumulate energy into happens to be something like a demonic realm. And I say that due to what happens every single time they utilize, or one of those, some of the newer quantum computing systems begin to function and calculate. You have the same mental effects on people around those facilities, right? Night terrors, strange encounters,
people
a rise in paranormal activity. All this stuff happens. Yeah.
So people living in Geneva, or maybe working at Cern, and they're living, just off campus there. Are you saying that that what they're doing there is affecting their psyche, their mental balance, their soul?
Yeah, well, they are being affected. In fact, a lot of people were moved away from that area into other areas because of that, because of paranormal activity. And what have we seen an increase in all over the earth?
Yes.
Paranormal activity.
Yes,
and
have.
These UAPs, this UFO stuff, right? So all that goes hand in hand. As soon as Cern fired up, it does not fire up by itself. It has a sister system in space over everybody's head. They may not know that, but there's a facility above your heads, which means there's more than one space station, right? There's more than one.
Really? Wait.
There's a facility up there, and all throughout many different countries, you have CERN-like facilities.
Wait, CERN's in the ground, Mike.
Right, but there's one above your head.
So they're floating around. That we got more than just the International Space Station.
That's right. They do mirror experiments, and when they accomplish or gather data from some of their collisions and some of their operations, that data goes all over these other facilities. So they're essentially, think of one component spread out throughout the earth. CERN is just one component of a larger machine.
This is a new information for me. I'm sure the audience, there's a lot of people out there already knew this or heard this, but I didn't know that. Starlink's up there. You got all these satellites, and they're operating and they're coordinated, and AI is managing, and there's a lot involved. And you got these D-wave computers or quantum computers. They're building, and down in Louisiana, because it's because they got to build. They need so much energy to run this AI that they're building them down in Louisiana because the energy's cheaper. I mean,
near the water. It's near the water
near
too.
They
need water for cooling. But Pastor, they haven't really. You have people talk about the technical jargon of D-wave and things, but here's something simple. You ready?
Okay.
Imagine you sitting behind your computer, right? Okay. You're about to type in what's the address of so and so. When you get halfway through your typing the question, it has already given you the answer. Think about that. You already have the answer before you ever complete asking the question.
I know. Yeah,
that's what happens. That's what happens. So there you are. There's quantum computing, which means they're tapping into something they don't fully understand.
I see.
And that's the part that they're trying to clamp down on, acting like they have full control over these systems. They do not. They don't have full control, right?
Have the computers taken over, basically? Are they close?
Well, they don't have to take over. We're dependent now. We can't function without them.
We've given them the power, right? We've given them the authority.
They don't have. You know what I believe? I believe something real. Here, I have a theory. I'm going to share a theory.
Okay,
one of my first theories. You ready?
The Mike from Around the World theory. Yes,
it's my theory.
Okay.
Now, long time ago, everybody knows about the fallen angels.
Yes.
And how they fell and they desired to have children,
yes.
right?
Yes.
In the book of Enoch, they even try to get Enoch to go to God so that their children could have eternal life, right? God said no, and not you either. I believe man has been influenced by those same beings with this technology that we have. We utilize it, yes, but we're also perfecting a mode of operation for them.
I see.
That's what I believe.
I see.
That's what I believe.
So they're using us to perfect a operating system for them.
I believe that. Think of
Yeah.
all the breakthroughs from Apple to Microsoft to Tesla, right? All of them got their information from the Akashic records. They said the information was given to them. They didn't think it up. It was given to them. Even Einstein said the information was given to him. It was given to him. In other words, they go meditate. All of them meditated, right? And when they did meditate, Tesla said that the Martians or somebody gave it to him. The guy from Apple said that he got that. He was taken up above the earth and it was given to him. The information was given to him. All of these guys have the exact same story.
So in other words, we are being manipulated by dark forces, fallen angels.
That's what I believe. Period. That's what I believe. Period. Yep. Yeah. Because look at what computers have done. Right? Did they really make our lives comfortable? They made us miserable. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They made us miserable, and they're not really solving anything. They're just creating new problems. It's like a control system that keeps us engaged, but more and more we're becoming isolated from each other.
So now let's talk about those fallen angels. In the book of Enoch or in Genesis chapter 6, we understand that the manipulation of our DNA was going on in the days of Noah, and now it's being done again. Our DNA is being manipulated, at a higher level and a more massive scale. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been happening for some time now, and the in the book of Daniel, where it discusses the statue. Now I know that people think at the feet that the author is talking about the sons of Seth. I don't believe that, because it said they shall mingle their seed with the seed of man, but they will not cleave one to another.
Yes, it does say that.
Well, we know in the Old Testament to cleave to someone is to embrace or marry them, right?
Yep.
And the sons of God in Genesis took unto themselves wives. This time they're not taking wives, they're taking materials, the seed. Isn't that exactly what all these people say that these abductions are about?
About the seed.
They're taking reproductive material.
Yes, they are. They're taking reproductive material.
They're saying
they're getting. And Mike, this webinar we're getting ready to have. We interviewed some of our online folks today, and my son and I did it, and for 3 hours, and it was incredible. The information these folks were sharing, the abductions, the encounters, whether they be angelic, in some cases, miraculous miracles saving them, to the demonic, trying to destroy them. And then all the different vehicles that some of them have seen in the sky with pictures even taken. We even got one person used to be in the airline industry for 30 years. And this lady said that the pilot called her to the cockpit. She went in. She thought he was wanting coffee or something. He said, sit down. She sat down and he said, look out there. And she looked and there was this UFO. And it was, I mean, the plane was traveling 500-600 miles an hour. This thing was staying right with them. And then all of a sudden it accelerated at enormous speeds. And he told her, he said, you can't say nothing about this. We've been instructed never to speak about what we see up here.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So this
is a job ender.
Yeah, it's the end of your career if you go,
It's been going on for a long time. The same thing. You know what? I've noticed something about the evolution of those sightings also. I've noticed that these things stay one step ahead, right within the scope of our imagination. Now, I say that because if you start looking at reports back in the 1500s and 1600s, right, people reported airships, right? Airships that look like, I don't know, the way they described them was like a blimp. The only
Yeah.
difference is they would have a light on it as bright as the sun. Well, we know they didn't have lights that bright back then, right?
Right.
People described back in the 1200s propellers. Nobody had propellers
No.
and blimps back in the 1200s. And before then, they described something akin to thunderbirds, right? Metallic birds.
Mhm.
So they always stay within the scope of our imagination.
Just a little bit
Notice
ahead
that.
of us. It's
That's
30,
right.
40 years
That's right.
ahead of us. Yeah.
That's right. So now what does that tell you? That means something is extremely seductive and they want to be seen. They want to be seen in this certain way to continue the mystique in the earth, right? Because when man locks on to a mystery, he begins to invite things he knows nothing about into his life, right? If there were no mysteries, everybody would be sober. They would. They'd be sober, locked into sound doctrine, but they're not locked into sound doctrine.
No.
When there's that plausible thing that defies what a person believes in and is rooted and grounded in, we start to drift. We start to imagine other things. And at that point, anything on the other side can become whatever, we need it to be and manifest to deceive us, right? To plant seeds within us. And what do? Because of money and fame and all this stuff, they feed us an idea and we get on top of the world. We're not, once a person has power and money, they're not going to trade that for anything, right?
No.
So then they begin to beg these things, as they do now, especially Moloch and Baphomet, because it's all in the foods. The sign of Lucifer is in the foods, and that was a ritual, by the way, to have people ingest the symbol of Lucifer for power, right? Which is why the symbol of Lucifer is in all the foods, right? It's in all the food packings, and the food itself is marked in the food itself. But they did all this stuff. The fallen angels institute this stuff to keep mankind broken. The more a person depends upon this world, the more they dedicate themselves to Luciferian ideals. They may not even know it, but that's exactly what's happening. So the more we partake of this world and love it, if we start loving it, because in the Bible, didn't it say to love the world is to have enmity with God?
Yes, it does.
And that's like an angry separation.
Yeah.
But why? Why would loving the world do that? Because it's dedicated, right? It's already dedicated. The ritual of Moloch takes place every single week. So if a person on this earth is not in the light of Christ, they're already in the darkness and subservient to Satan. There is no gray area. None.
Right.
So they're at it again. That's fallen angels at
Yeah.
their full tilt because they know their time is coming.
All right. Mike, let's shift gears for a minute and go into the Middle East a little bit here. And of course, you got Russia and Ukraine, and you got Iran nukes, and you got India and Pakistan. But let's talk about President Trump's trip to the Middle East. He's trying, I think, to figure out a way to make peace among people by using, peace through strength, but also peace through economy, and which is strength. Also, it's kind of the Solomon approach, I think. How do you think it's worked? Is he being just played? What's your thoughts on this?
Okay, last time when he was in office, right?
Yeah.
The Abraham Accords went well.
Yes, it did.
So long as he was there.
Yes.
And that's the key factor here, right? You have to have some sort of a powerful enforcer behind these things. Because in the Middle East, anybody who's dealt with or has Middle Eastern counterparts, they have an understanding of what they're dealing with. In the Middle East, they don't forgive, number one.
No.
They will change and they will invite you into their homes. They'll feed you and everything else. And, and then at a given time, you're gone. They're going to get you and they're going to tell you, well, we had to do that. That was our revenge, right?
Yep.
This is how they are. So they're systematic in what they do. When you have people who turn from, tyrants to friendly, this is for a season. It's for a season. And believe me, they're going to get something out of it, right? They're positioning. I know I'm playing the voice is not good in this, but President
No.
Trump has had a life-altering incident
Yes,
that
he did.
happened. So naturally, when that happens to an individual, they start having hope for the hopeless, right?
Yeah.
So he sees the good in everything. He's starting to see the good that can come out of things, and he's ready to forgive people, right?
Yep.
Unfortunately, in the Middle East, they will take advantage of this. But then because now, we're people of faith here, but because of their faith, Pastor Paul,
Yeah.
Christ is not working in them. Something
No.
else is working in them, right?
Yeah.
So they'll make the deals. They make it to the point where things are, looking good, but then the darkness is going to rise.
So
It never fails.
I agree. And when he embraced or just said, you know what, we're going to wipe the slate clean with Syria. This guy's in charge. He took over. So we're going to wipe everybody's slate clean. We're starting over. Okay. And he embraces. This guy's a terrorist. There was a $7.5 million bounty on his head at one point. He was with Al Qaeda. We fought him in Iraq in 2003, and our brave soldiers captured him and put him in prison for 5 years. But I understand what you're saying. Trump is looking at the world with the eyes of compassion now.
Yeah.
And he's trying to say, we got to get past this. The bloodshed's got to stop. We got to quit the killing. Let's just start over. And that's what he's doing. Let's just start over. Can we all get along? That's what he's trying to do. But you're saying they don't look at things in the same set of eyes. They don't have they don't have the same heart that we have.
No, and so long as he's in power, right? Because they know he's unpredictable.
Yeah. Oh,
They know that. They're not going to mess with the U.S. military.
No.
Number two. And so when you have somebody like that in office, they're going to say, okay, well, let's go along with this and we can get out of it, Pastor. But here's the problem. The problem is not while Trump is in office.
When he leaves.
The problem is if something happens to him. That's going to be the problem. If anything happens to him or when he's out of office, all of us should have an understanding exactly where things are going to go, right? Exactly what's going to happen to all the policies he's putting in place. Do we really believe we're going to have some a good person to come behind him and really straighten up the world? That would make Revelation void, right? So we know that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Even if let's say somebody who is probably a really good, strong leader, it doesn't matter. At some point here, the beast is going to rise.
That's right.
You can't stop prophecy.
That's right.
What you're saying.
And the Bible says something that really gets my attention during times like this is when they say peace and safety, right? Then sudden destruction will come upon them as rail from woman. In my opinion, the only time, because they've been saying peace and safety for a long time.
Yeah.
They don't say peace and safety. They say peace and security, right?
Yeah.
But they'll only say that when they have accomplished something. If President Trump gets these guys to agree, I'm telling you, they're going to have a little ceremony.
Yes.
And they're going to say, finally, fine. And when they say that, I'm putting on a Kevlar, right? Because I know what's coming next. When they say that, it's over.
Then sudden destruction.
It's over.
Sudden destruction.
It's going to be over. Yeah.
I think you're right.
Here in America, you have essentially a few armies that do not belong to us here in America, and they're getting ready to strike.
We had a guy today in Michigan. He was going to go in and do a mass killing in Warren, Michigan, on one of our military bases, but thank God, the Department of Homeland Security as well as the FBI, they caught wind of this and they monitored him and watched him right up to the day he was supposed to strike, and then they went and pounced on him.
And he was not quite, he wasn't, American.
No.
He was but think of this. Think of people who are not exactly from the Middle East but have developed a heart for the Middle East, who have converted their religion to Islam. And they're right here in America. They look like everybody else. They talk like everybody else, but they hate the USA and they hate the religion of the USA. Think about that. They're right here. They're just not saying it. They're coordinating.
Right. Yes.
Kash Patel, he knows they're coordinating, but it's very difficult to catch your next door neighbor, right? And plus, I promise you, every time they get one of these guys, it's unbelievable. Who would ever guess, for example, your average Caucasian being an Islamic strategist here in America?
No, you wouldn't expect that.
Well, that's what's happening. And so they do not like the president. They won't accept his policies.
No.
They do not like America nor America's religion. They are totally sold out to Islam. Now they have a CIA plant who's supposed to be the Mahdi. What's that guy's name? This new guy that came on the scene.
Hamed he calls himself Hashem. He calls himself Hashem. Yeah.
And keep in mind, this guy came up during the Arab Spring. Yes, he was outspoken during the Arab Spring.
Yes,
he also popped up in some other things. And it's a known fact that after the Cold War, the CIA, they paid Christians, Catholics, Islamic personnel, and everybody else to do their plans around the world. Because when you're in a situation like that, you start throwing money around. You recruit people of all religions for a specific, end goal. They're doing the same thing now.
Abdullah, his name is Abdullah.
Somebody's
Hashem.
behind this guy. Somebody's behind this guy.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Somebody's behind this guy.
Now his father was an American, and Jewish American, and his mother was an Egyptian American. And he went to Cairo. And you remember during the Arab Spring when Hosni Mubarak was being overthrown in Cairo, he was in the streets protesting against Mubarak and was even arrested. So this guy has not been he's not as clean as the wind, he's not as pure as the wind driven snow in December either.
No, there are forces behind this guy. Yeah. And my personal belief is that there's some agencies behind this guy.
CIA.
Right. And this guy is meant to disrupt some things.
Yeah. Well, the CIA did do a lot of that, and they're still doing that in different parts of the world, trying to upset or create, uprisings, and this is part of the way to keep an imbalance, to keep America in control. But we're not the only ones that does that. I mean, other nations do it too, right?
And you always have elements of agencies that do go rogue. Right?
I agree.
They go rogue, period. There's some like Delta operators. You don't want one of those guys to go rogue, but they have, and one is rogue. So you have individuals of strong tactical mindsets and connections all over the place that are planning something.
Yes. All right. So now we're looking at what's happening in the Middle East. Now, what about this? Putin said he wanted to meet with Zelensky. And come meet me. I'll be in Turkey. Zelensky, I think Trump told Zelensky, you're going. So Zelensky's going, and then Putin bows out. Do you think Putin never intended to go in the first place?
There's no the KGB way. That's pretty good. Huh?
That's pretty good. I like your Russian accent there, Mike. The KGB for sure. That's how they operate, right?
Yeah, Putin he has his goal, and he's demonstrated he's not letting go of that goal. So
he's good. You're the one that told me, and I remember because I was in Jamaica. I was going to be preaching that night in Jamaica, and you and I were on the phone, and we were talking, and you said Putin. It was 2014. It was in April, I remember, and you said now that Putin is in Ukraine, he's never going to leave. Till he takes the whole country, he will not leave. And it's been 11 years. Yep. He's still there. He's taken a pretty big chunk, including Crimea, and he's not leaving, is he? I'm telling you, I don't think he's ever going to leave. I think he's going to take that country He's going to win a war of attrition, is what I'm watching. Am I right? Do you
Yeah,
think?
he's quite persistent. You know, I used to have a counterpart in Russia, and they just do not give up. Right? They don't give up. They have a mentality that Russia is the world. Right? Russia is
Okay.
the world, and they have a mindset it's their place of safety. That means they're not going to give up anything concerning Russia. Not anything, no concessions whatsoever concerning Russia.
So did you have a hard time negotiating with him? Yeah, or you just couldn't
Well,
believe what he said?
it was when you have a counterpart, you're the person with their pulse, so you know how they operate, what they're going to do, if they're in character, out of character, this, that, and the other. These guys are stubborn, but that stubbornness is more of a persistence, right? They get a focal point in mind, and do or die. That's what they're going to do. You know, that's what they're going to do.
Right.
They will devote their whole lives to one goal, and everything they do will surround that one goal. And when you find that out, you know, then the words take on brand new meaning. You have to, that's when you really start to listen to their communications, because a lot of what they will communicate is simply jargon, so to speak. They ever start talking about their focal point, you better take it as law. You know, that means they'll do
Right.
anything to keep that. And if they happen to be devoted, nothing will come before that goal. Nothing.
So that when they get zeroed in on an objective,
that's it.
They'll play around the edges, but that
That's
objective will not change.
That's it. Nothing will change.
Yeah.
Nothing does. And historically, they never have changed. There was one that did, Gorbachev, right?
Yeah.
He was the only one.
The only one.
That kind of altered some things, but yeah, then from there, everything is slowly going back to normal. Putin wants NATO out of his backyard.
Yes, I understand that.
He cannot give up the Ukraine, or NATO will be in his backyard.
Yeah, he knows it.
So he's not doing that.
And so Trump wants to stop the bloodshed and the killing, but it don't matter to Putin. Or
Trump doesn't want war. Trump does not want to fight. But I have a feeling. Trump is about to be angered because somebody's not going to play ball according to his rules.
Yeah, he's
right?
starting
Somebody's
to get angry.
not going to do it.
Yep.
And you know, you kind of, it's going to happen, and then he's going to have somewhat of a blowout there, and we'll see where things go from there. But he's dealing with some very tactful people, and I hate to say it, this deal with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Well, that looks good on the surface,
right?
Because of you know, financial reasons,
economics, right?
But tactfully, that's a no. It's tactfully,
that's
no, because they will embrace
that's a hornet's
anybody
nest.
They can get favor from.
Yeah,
right.
That's a hornet's
That's
nest.
why I believe they're going to be wiped off the face of the earth, because they continue to shake. They'll shake two enemies' hands until that one enemy that, you know, they're totally with them, and then when they're out of the picture, you know, they'll tell the other guy, I'm totally with you. Well, that's the way they operate. Maybe that's why China just cut off Pakistan. Not good for Pakistan.
No. So
did
did you ever have a counterpart in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, I did.
I figured that. So
now Saudi Arabia is somewhat you could call them a strong ally of American plans. So they're not quite like any other player out there, right? They're more malleable, I'll say. But they're it's almost like a Wild West in costume, right? They look one way, but believe me, these guys are up to things. They're doing things, and it's very difficult sometimes to see what direction they're actually going. Most countries are fed up with Saudi Arabia because they keep changing sides and goals and this, that, and the other.
So they're not very loyal. In other words,
they bow to the strongest player. That's what they do.
Okay.
So if anybody ever showed them more strength than the USA, naturally they're going to side with them too.
Yeah. So the U.S. has to remain strong and keep them in the back pocket. And at the same time, though, the United States is trying to help defend Israel in a hostile Middle East. and that's not easy.
Yeah.
Do you think?
No.
Do you think that Netanyahu? And I know the media tried to manufacture a rift between Trump and Netanyahu. I don't believe a word of it. And Trump basically said, "Look, we're tight. You're crazy."
Yeah, they talk directly. They're not worried about the media.
Do you think that Netanyahu has made his mind up that he's just going to take the entire Gaza Strip? He's just going to finish it off. That Israel's going to control it from now on. It's not going back
I think
to Palestinian Authority or anybody else.
I believe the U.S. gave Benjamin Netanyahu some latitude to accomplish what he needs to for the sake of his own nation. But I also believe this. This is something that we have big acts of betrayal underway now, right?
Yeah.
In that betrayal, we're going to start to see what never ever took place before, right? Because if Benjamin Netanyahu is not over Israel, right, then Israel is going to be finished. No one else will defend Israel like Benjamin Netanyahu.
No, you're right.
Everybody else is going to make concessions.
Yep.
Now think about this. So we have Benjamin Netanyahu, who is, nobody can control that guy.
Nope.
Right? We have President Trump. Nobody can control that guy. Right?
Too strong.
We have other individuals that are coming on the scene. They're similar the same way. Right? Now, all of them at some point are not going to be there.
Yeah.
They're just not going to be there.
And that's going to change. Then everything's going to change.
When whoever it is, I'm telling you, when these guys are not there, everything is going to abruptly change. The only other scenario I could see is if Trump were so enraged about something, right, that he would have an issue with how things are going in the Middle East. And if he ever did that, he would let people fight it out. He doesn't intervene when he's upset with, two or more nations.
Yeah,
right?
Right.
That's the only other scenario. But at some point, and it's something that we don't know how it's going to happen. We just know that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is that Jerusalem, it will be purged.
They're going to overrun it. They're going to overrun it at some point.
We know that the Middle Eastern alliances will capture Jerusalem. They will take it. We don't know exactly how. We just know that happens. We don't know the dynamics as to what bit. But I have this sensation. It's almost like it's a sensation that the unexpected is quite close. It is everything in me and everybody I know is starting to have those same type of vibes.
You've been talking a lot about the betrayal, that there's a major betrayal coming.
Yes.
And and I've seen it. I've seen guys in Israel that want to betray Netanyahu and they want to do it in the doctrine of appeasement. I think Yair Lapid is certainly one of them. But and then you got Macron hanging around. And I don't know what those guys are snorting up their nose on the train in Poland, but Macron is kind of a weasel kind of guy. I'm sorry, but to me, he's a weasel. He's like wherever the he's like electricity. He takes the least path of resistance, and he wants to be in charge all the time. But I don't see how he's going to survive in this world of tyrants. I mean, this world right now, the most strongest. We've got World War II. Remember Churchill, Hitler, Mussolini, FDR, with General Patton and these guys. There was strong leaders, strong, powerful people. Right now, we got them too. Right now, we got them. Trump, Putin, Netanyahu, maybe even this guy, this Syrian. I don't trust this guy, and some others. But as you're saying, is if there's some shifting, if there's ever a change in this power structure, somebody loses one and a new one comes in, it's weak. Things change quickly.
That's right.
Fast.
That's right. In World War II, they had some strong people there, but take notice that Hitler exercised his dominion first.
Yes, he did.
Because Churchill, he wasn't quite on the scene. He wasn't quite up to snuff. The USA wasn't quite up to snuff. And it was a reactionary thing. They were drawn into it. Right? They didn't do, the USA didn't do anything until we took some hits. right? So
No.
then when you're talking about strength of good, normally it does not manifest until the evil manifests first,
You're right.
right?
Evil's
And
usually
in this
strikes
case,
first.
that's right. In this case, I believe we're at the dawn of seeing that. Now, there's one more scenario, something that kind of keeps me up at night, you could say. I pray a lot about it. Everybody has been noticing some odd geological activity. Uh, we can't deny it. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
volcanoes are waking up all over the
Right.
place. Threats are everywhere. The weather is, we're having floods and fires all
Yes.
throughout the USA and other places. If we underwent, the USA underwent some catastrophic geological event, which, you know, is well within the realm of possibilities at this point, the USA would effectively be knocked out of the picture. And then the rest of the world would not hesitate to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah, I know.
They wouldn't do it. And so this is something else, because look at some of the earthquakes and some of the volcanic activity we've been having, and some of the you know, we had plate movement not more than 5-6 days ago. For the first time, it was caught on video, and which is not good. We have a threat of a volcano which could absolutely affect
Yeah,
the
it could,
totality of California, right? Which
Yep.
would also wake up a line of ancient volcanoes, which are slowly waking up. So I think in the near term, the USA is going to undergo some pretty catastrophic things, right?
I mean, that would change everything if we had,
it would.
You know,
It would.
if Mount Spur blew up and Anchorage went under,
It would.
or if the Cascadia subduction zone,
That's right.
massive quake that killed
That's right.
4 million people, or like you said, or some other, the New Madrid, all of a sudden after 200 years,
It
finally
could, yeah, it could be that. It could be under New York. It
Under
could be,
New York.
there's a number of things that could happen. We already know that with these fires are about to become devastating. We know that
Yeah.
the way the weather is patterned right now, the infrastructure of the USA cannot take too much more of it, right? Ground saturation is horrific. The ground is hardened underneath in some of these dry areas, and then when rain hits it, it just it just floods all over the place, right? Flood damage is going to be real bad. I know that we're about to have a water event too that will
Yep.
change the face of many things. The enemies will take full advantage of that situation. They're going to take full advantage of it. Also, we know at some point that something so bad happens on the earth that everybody changes their tactics, right?
Yep.
And we have, issues from the heavens that they have essentially cut off. They're not, well, let's just say people don't have access like they used to, right? To modeling equipment of what's happening in the atmosphere or in space.
They've been
because
shutting,
I
they've
believe
been shutting certain instruments down.
we are in the season right now where we're going to be affected greatly. They just had an electromagnetic scan of our solar system. It's a video scan that took place over, I believe, 2 months. Anyway, the same electromagnetic activity that's taking place on Jupiter is mirrored by the sun. I mean, it's happening at the exact same time between Jupiter and the sun, which nobody has seen before, right?
That means there's a third object then. There's something.
Yeah, they're going over this data, but Pastor, it's impactful. It's very impactful. The nature of Jupiter itself has been deeply defined as of late. It is not like people thought it was. In fact, Jupiter is not like people thought it was. So a lot of people are going to have to get used to the different dynamics of the planets not being what we were taught, but being something totally different, which means we got it wrong. Okay, we got it wrong.
Okay.
But all these things are beginning to alter, right?
So what do you?
All these things.
Okay, so we got this webinar coming up next week. Okay, next Friday, which I got to get you filmed, get yours done here next week early one day. So I'll have Heidi contact you. Okay, this Gil Brazard, I was talking to him, and he's going to give us an update on Planet X. Mike, I know you know this binary system is affecting everything. I mean, there's no question. Now you're saying it's even affecting our sun and Jupiter, both very similar. So the rest of the planets are caught in the fray, including planet Earth. We can find the signs of this in the Bible, of the sun heating us and scorching men, or other straight line winds and all these other things that we see happening. You've been talking about for years. Are you anticipating? And you've mentioned the void. I'm going to talk to you about that in the webinar. I want to see if we can get, and I know you've talked about the incoming asteroid meteorite belt or something, the clouds or two clouds.
Yep.
So I'd like to get all that kind of information brought up to speed or up to, do you think in the next period of time, short period of time, maybe 5-10 years max, let's just say 5. Or let's just say the rest of this year, because Gilbert Zard's concerned about 2025. I mean, he can't even hardly get out of that one. Do you see some type of major change in our planet or our solar system that's going to absolutely be a game changer? Is there something about to happen that is going to shock? Or do we already know what's going to come? Or is that why they're building underground cities? Is there already preparation for something major to happen?
Oh, absolutely. You just said it. Is there preparation for something major? Yes. Yes. In fact, Pastor Paul, a while ago, well, I guess I didn't talk about it openly, but I gave a scenario of the actual end, right? Like when Earth would be altered so much that nothing would be the same.
Okay.
And somebody reminded me that the same steps I mentioned have been happening, right? Now, and it's not, it's just more common sense things. For example, if something were about to happen here on this Earth and people had knowledge of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a 4 to 5 year preparation.
At
time,
least, yes,
right?
at least, right.
Which means one of the first things they would have to do is pull people out of society. They would have to. So people would get the report that this person died, and that person died, and this person died, and this person overdosed, and that person overdosed, and they would never see them again. That's the only way you could transport people to a safe location, right? They would also have to acclimate to being underground in the first place and to being within artificial light. So that doesn't happen overnight, right?
Takes time.
You would also have to have farming, food supplies, and all that. So there would be a diversion of manufacturing,
ventilation,
underground,
some kind of ventilation system too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but think of the food. The food requirements alone would require that they would have to start investing in crops underground, technology in crops underground. GMO would be everywhere. And I said this in 2010 about GMO, that in order to survive, you would have to have food that's resilient against radiation, because anything that penetrates the atmosphere, like a meteor storm, will certainly disrupt our atmosphere, causing higher amounts of radiation to be on the Earth. Or you'd have to have GMO food that's resilient or resistant to radiation. Do you know that the GMO food now, if you expose it to radiation, it doesn't hurt them. It doesn't hurt the food. That's why the crops can look so good. Where they were starting back in 2002, crops were starting to wilt too fast. I'm not sure if people can remember that. But
so you're saying that they genetically altered the food to handle radiation?
To be more robust, right? That's why you can take a piece of bread right now and it won't mold the same way other bread did, right? It won't.
I know that.
You can throw it in the oven and you can, well, they probably have not refined the process, but you can see that it has these long strands in the bread, right? That's not part of the bread.
That's not wheat. That's not
so
wheat.
all these things they've been doing. The popcorn itself feels like it'll cut your throat going down because it's made with that GMO corn. All this stuff is resilient, right?
Yeah.
The growth hormones would be necessary due to the absence of sunlight. Think about that, because the sun is responsible for manufacturing vitamin D and some other things in our
Yes.
bodies.
Yes.
That's essential to growth. You'd have to replace all of that if you went underground, which means growth hormones would have to be in all the foods
You know,
to
my
sustain a
my
natural society.
well, my brother-in-law is a landscaping. He's had a landscaping company for quite a long time. He's a great landscaper. And he was down here in the Villages the other day. Him and his wife came down, my wife's sister. We were out on a golf cart. We're actually just riding around. He was looking at the really nice landscaping, just admiring it, really liked it. And then he said to me, he said, "You see these bushes right here?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "They spray them with something so they'll slow the growth. That way
Yep.
they don't have to keep coming and clean and purging them." I said, "What?"
Yeah.
He said, "We can spray stuff on these bushes and on these trees and we can slow them down, or
Yeah.
we can spray stuff on them and make them grow like crazy."
Yep.
We can go either way we need to go based on the environment we're in. So
Yeah.
he goes, so, and so when you said that you have to grow things is so that with artificial light, you got to make the food has to be able to function and prosper and yield under artificial light. There's a movie out right now, or there's a TV series called Paradise, where they build an underground city for 25,000 people to survive the apocalypse. And they had artificial sun. They have an artificial sun, and there's crops and there's whatever. But this wasn't done overnight. This was like a 20-year plan.
Yeah.
Is this happening
ironic?
Right now?
Ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they would write a movie where the smartest tech innovative person in the world would be responsible for designing those cities.
And
for
the only
president.
people, and the only
ironic, isn't it?
The only people that got to go, you had to get a ticket. You had to be pretty special. You're not going. You had to be really special.
Right.
You have to have something to offer.
That's right. Also, if that were going to happen, they would start pulling the good people, right?
Yes,
down in these places. Left up top would be the wannabes.
Yes.
The people who always wanted a certain position, right? But never could get it until because look at some of the candidates in Washington. Just think about something. In a normal scenario, nobody would select these people. I'm just being serious. They wouldn't.
You're exactly right. No way.
Due to a lack of competence, folks. All right. People have to select what's left over. So what I'm saying is that these folks that are being selected are not what you would normally select. You wouldn't even see them in the runnings, but because nobody is left to run, that's what we get.
They're giving us the left to
and I'm not being funny about it.
No, you're saying they're leaving.
I'm just saying it's unreal for a reason, because most of the folks who actually, they knew things, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah. No wonder our infrastructure is having trouble. No wonder they're relying on AI to try to.
Well, if something's about to happen, they're not going to put all the money topside. They're not going to do that. They're going to put all the money where they have to survive. So if all this is real, Pastor Paul, then look for you have to look for major changes up top. And if you start to see them,
we're seeing them.
Then when humanity starts changing mentally, we talked about this on your show.
Yes,
one of the first times I met you.
Yes.
And I was saying that people would begin to change mentally.
Yes.
Children would hold their parents hostage. In other words, instead of the parent telling the child what they're going to eat, the parent would ask the child,
"What do you want?"
What the child demands to eat. And then the child would kick the parent out of the room or something like that, right? So this is what we have right now. The whole mentality of the family unit, humanity itself is changing.
It's messed up. It's really messed up bad.
But it's a predictable thing. It's what happens when certain guidelines and certain influential institutions of say like truth are taken out of the way, right? When people are abandoned, they're left to fend for themselves, and all sorts of things begin to manifest. Then hostilities rise with the breakdown of the atmosphere. The atmosphere and the human brain are intimately tied together. If it goes, well, people are not going to think right. They're going to become quite violent, quite irritated, agitated. That's when the swelling in the body starts, and nobody can understand why. They call them heavy walkers. I saw that in a text written a long time ago, when the destroyer came around the first time, or whatever time it was.
Heavy
That
walkers.
people had a hard time walking because of swelling. Everybody started swelling up. Their joints were hurt. Everybody's joints were hurting, right? The kids were emotionally disconnected. That sounds like it says most kids that were being born in those days were emotionally disconnected, and they did not like noise.
Wow.
Think of it. So what does that remind you of? That reminds me of autism.
Autism, exactly.
But they're not going to call it autism back in the ancient days. When you start looking into those things and the conditions of the people, you begin to see a mirror of what we have right now.
Wow. Wow. Well, we're going to keep our eyes open. That's why we're watching. And that's why we're watching on the wall is the things that are happening. Certainly the changes are happening, and they're happening rapidly and fast. And the only way you're going to get through this, folks, is with Christ. There's no other way around that. You have to have Christ. No matter what, you have to have Jesus Christ in your life, being led by the Holy Spirit and following the word of God to be able to sustain you through these times that we're experiencing, and it's going to get worse. It is. And Mike, thank you so much for giving us a tremendous information here. I think it's very, very important. I really do, that people understand that it's not going to be like it always has been. You need to know it is changing. Things are rapidly accelerating in these end times. So I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on tonight.
It's always an honor, Pastor Paul.
The honor's mine. Truly is. Thank you, brother.
All right. God bless.
God bless.